We have been working with Bootstrap. We got introduced to Bootstrap, and so the purpose of this video is going to be to utilize some Bootstrap, and we're going to wrap it into our introduction to JavaScript. And the purpose of JavaScript is to make our pages interact with our users without sending data, or our page, not data, well, data, but our page back to the server. And so everything is done right within the browser, and so we can actually change our content dynamically that interacts with our user. And so that's what we're going to be introduced to in this particular video. And so here's what I'm going to be creating. Even though this page itself might not be anything useful, it is designed as an introduction to JavaScript. And so the idea behind this page is looks like I've got a little pop-up, and we're going to see some things called variables and so forth. And in this particular pop-up, I'm going to type in a name that's going to dynamically change this button. And so if I said my name was actually Stitch and I click on OK, you're going to see that Stitch comes up instead, so it changed the content in this button. We're also going to do a little bit of, we're going to, well, for example, if I click on this button, or if I click on this word, then a little pop-up comes up. If I click on this button, then a pop-up comes up. If I click on change dog, you're going to see this image change. And if you click on this particular button, you're going to see the image go back to the original. And again, recognize that all of this is being done dynamically. At no point did this page reload, but the content changed based on our user clicking on a button, or we could change some of the content dynamically based on that pop-up box. So that's where we're headed in this series of videos. All right, so it looks like we have some Bootstrap we need to get loaded up, and then we'll work on some JavaScript. And so if you look at the editor that I'm going to be working in, I have a little project started. I have a folder with images in it. I have two images, the two dogs that we're toggling back and forth with in the button that we saw in the example a moment ago. I have a blank index page because obviously I need to fill that in. I'm going to utilize an index page and a styles page, both of which have nothing in it. The styles page is the idea that we can utilize Bootstrap styles as well as our own custom styles, and so that's why I created that styles page. So let's get started. Looks like we need some Bootstrap. So I'm going to go over to getbootstrap.com, and at the time of this recording, if I look at what I get on the home page, it looks like the current version is version 5.02. So you want to pay attention to what version you're utilizing when you're working with Bootstrap, because they are different. How can I tell? Well, let's see. So I'm going to click on Get Started. I'm going to use version 5 for this demo. And so if I look in the CDN link for version 5, it will show you which version that link is linking to. So this is version 5. And that's important too when you're looking at your documentation, because your documentation is going to be different for the different versions. And so if I look up here in the little drop down, I can see that I'm working with version 5's documentation, and there is my CDN for version 5. If you're working on a prior version, version 5 is relatively new right now, and so 4 is very prevalent. So if I click on 4, you'll see that here's it's demonstrating that I'm working on version 4. This is the documentation for version 4, so I would want to make sure I'm utilizing that. And then if I look at the CDN, it's in fact linking to version 4.6. So very important to pay attention to all of that. But I think I'm going to go back in this video to version 5. And so I'm going to scroll down and find that starter template. There it is. And copy it into my index.html. All right, I'm also going to collapse my project pane here just so I have a little bit more real estate for this video. And there's already pre-wired a bunch of things for me. So if I look at my page, it does in fact look a little bootstrapped already, because the H1 is styled in Bootstrap a little different than my default H1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my H1 in a div class container. And I'm going to put my H1 that was created into my container. I'm going to hit refresh, and you'll notice that it got indented. And so just as a reminder, I'm going to give this a style equals background color, and just for a visual I'm going to make it green just to make it really obvious. And you'll see that what the container does is it creates a element that extends almost, let's say approximately 80% across the width of the page. So as my page moves, that's going to also shrink and grow, and it's going to indent it into the middle. So that's what container does. So it gets us an ability to put our content sort of centered in our page. You remember that container dash fluid, or if I leave off container, then that container is going to extend across the entire width of the page, again responsively. So in this particular example, I'm just going to keep the container so that I sort of have this centralized content. And we're going to put some of our, let me show you in our example. This will be our container, and we're going to create this next. So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, first of all, let's get rid of this green color because that was just to demonstrate something. And we're going to change up our H1 a little bit. So if you look at the H1 in the example, this one is a little bit smaller. So let's look how that might happen. So I'm going to erase this green because that was just to, like I said, demonstrate how the container worked. And I'm going to come back in here and make sure that it's gone. Yay! All right, so now let's look back at Bootstrap, and I'm going to bring your attention down to, these are good. These are all your documentation of the different classes and different ways that you can style your Bootstrap. And so the more comfortable you get with all of this, the better you're going to be at Bootstrap. So I'm going to click on, let's see, where am I headed? Content. And I want to go to typography. And I want to show you in typography, if I scroll down, here is what an H1, it gives you information, what does an H1 look like? And our H1 does currently look like that, so that's super cool. But if you go further down and you look at, it says fancy display heading. So there's different, oh, let's see, really I'm kind of heading here. So there's different classes that you can apply to your elements, to your HTML tags to make things look different. So I'm going to utilize this class equals display -1 to make my display look a little bit different. And so in my H1, it says all I need to do, I'm just going to copy this to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go into my H1, which is here, and I'm going to put it in my class here. Now recognize that it doesn't have to be an H1. You can put it on any tag that's demonstrating or showing text, but I'm just going to keep with this because that's what I have set up. And so now if we look at our hello world, we're going to see that just by applying that Bootstrap class to our H1, we get something that looks quite a bit different. Now we're going to add our own styling to Bootstrap styling. So it's very possible and very common we have all of Bootstrap styles, but we want to apply our own styles as well. And so the important part when you're doing your own custom style sheet is that our style sheet, our custom style sheet, is going to go after Bootstrap's. And so the idea then is we don't want Bootstrap to, whatever's displayed last is generally what's going to take over or what's going to be rendered if there's a conflict. So we don't want Bootstrap to overwrite what we do. We want to overwrite something in Bootstrap. So again, always your style sheet link should go after Bootstrap's link. And so I'm going to make a link to my style sheet, which currently has nothing in it. And we're going to add some styling onto Bootstrap styling. And so in my style sheet, for example, right now I'm just going to do a body. I'm going to make a background color of, we're going to make it a nice little gray. Oops, what happened to my page background color? And then I'm going to do it a gray. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's see that displayed. Okay, and let me put these a little closer together so we can see them at the same time. There we go. And so we've got a little gray. It's hard to see, but it's a light gray. What else am I going to do? I'm going to go into, now here's something else that you can do. This is an example of overwriting. So, and I kind of did it by doing the inline style, but we have a class container. Now remember, this container is provided by Bootstrap. And so it is a class, and just like anything in CSS, we can, even if it's a class someone else created or we created, we can apply additional styling onto the container class. And so Bootstrap, remember, is giving container the ability to kind of be 80% and then centered. Well, we're going to add some additional styling onto the container. And so we're going to create a class with a period container. container, and I'm going to give this container a background color white. And I'm going to, let's see how that looks. So now you can see that it's set apart. So you can see the gray now and then the white. And let's also give it a little bit of margin. So I'm going to do a margin top. And we'll do something like 24 pixels just to kind of push it off the top here of the page. So it's pushing it down because we're going to apply some of that nice little border around, border around it. So I want it pushed off the top. All right, so that's what we're going to do next. All right, so what I'm going to do then, in order to make that happen, and just to demonstrate a point, is I'm going to give my container an additional class that I create. Okay, so I'm going to add a class called heading. Now, let's see, I could continue putting this next styling on container itself. So you might, when I'm finished, say, well, couldn't I put that in the container itself? Yeah, but I'm just trying to demonstrate a point to you. And my point is that I can create a second class that I can also create styling for that does something. So here's Bootstrap's class that through my custom CSS, I have given additional styling to. I'm going to create my own custom class. Did I say? Yeah, I think this Bootstrap's class. This is my, yeah, I think I said that right. Hopefully I said that right. So I'm going to create a selector for the class that I just created called heading. And this is where I'm going to give it the shadowing. And so we're going to do, I don't know if I'm going to have, let's just spread this out so you can see it. So I'm going to do a box shadow. And I'm going to do 5 pixels will be your horizontal spread, your horizontal distance. My vertical distance, I'm going to give it a spread of 25 pixels. So how far wide will it go? And then how much will it be blurred? I'm just going to do 8 pixels. And then I'm going to give it a color of gray. And so that's what all those shortcuts mean. So there's that. All right, that looks good. That's kind of where I was headed with that. And what I also might do is I'm going to give some padding to this text. So I'm going to say padding, and maybe we'll do 25 pixels. And then let's see that happen. So when I hit refresh, sort of pushes it off the edges of that container. So what we've done in this video then is, besides the fact that we've started ourselves up with Bootstrap, we're using Bootstrap 5, so we linked all of that necessary CDN here in our index page, but we're also demonstrating the fact that we can utilize our own style sheet after Bootstrap style sheet so that we can add additional styling to our page that we wanted to create additionally to what Bootstrap is providing us. We can use Bootstrap's classes to add additional functionality or styles. We can create our own classes and add them to a class that was perhaps already provided by Bootstrap and to add additional styling. So in our next video then, we're going to start tackling some JavaScript.